evening, and welcome to A Deadly Silence. I'm your host, Larry Curtis. It is the goal of all of us affiliated with our program to bring you current and educational information surrounding the drug and alcohol epidemic, not only here in the city of Brockton, but throughout all of our South Shore communities. This evening, we are pleased to have with us as our guest Jean Marie McCauley. Jean Marie is actually the owner of Recovery Happens, Inc., which is an apparel type of a store that you could look online and order apparel that is focused on the recovery aspects of both men and women. And that's why, it says you can find us at Facebook, and it's exactly how you see it. Recovery Happens, Inc., you'll find it. And it's men and women, and there's jewelry, and some hats, and some beanies, and sweaties, and all that stuff, We're going to come back to that.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I think the real issue here today is that viewers, you're a mother who is in recovery herself, but also lost 3 children to substance abuse disorder.
Correct.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Do you want
Tell us a lot about that.
I know. I could talk to you for hours probably on this subject. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned I'm in recovery. Addiction runs in my family with my dad, and he passed away at a really early age due to this. And I think we all say I'm not going to end up like that, but unfortunately I did. It was after I had my 4 kids that it kind of started for me and became a problem. My twins were born really early, 28 weeks, and my daughter was born blind, and my son Jordan had some other issues. So it just created some sadness and that inside feeling. It just, I think I've always felt like that, and you'll hear a lot of addicts tell you that, like a hole in my soul. I never felt good enough, pretty enough, smart enough. It didn't matter what crowd I fit into. I still felt alone, and I think that that goes for mostly every addict. And you hear this story, they'll tell you a piece of that. So it was after my twins were born. I got my hands on Percocets, and of course you hear it all the time.
And it wasn't a prescription.
It was not a prescription. It actually started with Furosets for migraine headaches, and I was on those for a while, and it led to something else because my body at this point needed something every day. I had 2 babies in the hospital and 2 at home. So, and they were all under 5. So I had 4 under 5. Oh my God. Yeah, crazy as that is. But it was shortly thereafter my marriage kind of went. So it was me and the kids. He's a very big part of their lives. He was there. He was not there. Right. But it was me solely raising them. Yeah. And so, 7 years into it, I'm taking something every day and not even realizing it. And people are starting to say things to me, you look like you're losing a lot of weight. You're just jealous. You're just jealous.
Everybody wants to lose weight.
Now they want to look it's the denial. You know what I mean? Just wasn't ready to look at what was going on with my own life. So when somebody confronted me,
you had no time with 4 children of that age.
That's right. And I worked a full-time job.
Right.
So it was 7 years later. I ran out of whatever it was, and I got really sick. And it was the first time I realized I had a problem. And I put myself into detox, came out, and didn't get much in the 7 days that you're in a detox. You don't get much, really. Somebody still medicated when you come out, so I didn't learn anything. I didn't know anything differently, and within a couple of days, I was back doing the same thing again. Yep. And this went on for a couple of detoxes until I finally said, 7 days is not enough. I think I'll do a soap program. It's 10 days. And I came out, and I learned a little bit more, a little more abstinent, but I still didn't know enough of what I needed to do to stay sober. So I decided in the year 2000 to go down to the Emerson House. It's a women's halfway house. It's a great halfway house for women. And I packed my stuff, and I figured I'm going to go as long as it's going to take me to understand what's going on with me, what I need to do, what is this addiction, what is wrong with me, and all that stuff. And so the 4 months there, I got to journal and look at a lot of my behaviors and why I was acting out and all this other stuff. So, and we had meetings. Every day we had to go to one, so that became a constant thing.
Yep.
So I built stability and understanding, so when I left there, first thing they tell you is, get a sponsor, join a group, and get active and get yourself plugged in, because if you don't, you're going to drown.
Right.
And I did. And I did everything I was told, and that's why I stayed sober 8 years. I did the step work, and it allowed me in this process to be there for my kids. My boys are all very athletic. My daughter, like I said, was born blind, and she still is blind today. So Dad kind of took over the role of, Daddy's little girl, but she constantly was with him, and Mommy's boys were, Mom took responsibility of the boys. And so I was there for all their sports, and they went to meetings. They knew that there was recovery out there. I was an example of it. They saw it. They gone to meetings. Why are you bringing us here to the basement? But so they knew it was there when the time came. And because I had done some work on myself, I actually could start to see their behaviors, which a lot of parents that are not addicts and don't know, they're not going to catch the signs right away.
I have two sons that probably was clueless about the signs for a couple of years.
Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And I think the only reason why I knew was because of my own journey.
Right.
I could start to see the behaviors, the defiance, each one of them. Corey was my oldest. He was never did any drugs and alcohol pretty much through his high school years. He was an all-star football player. I was listening to Chris earlier talking about her kids with sports. And so Corey had an injury in his senior year. And I think it's a combination of the stuff I already seen, not feeling good enough, because he was an overachiever. Very introverted, though. He didn't talk about his feelings much. And he had a girlfriend that first love. All through high school, and it's their senior year, and she's going off to college, so she breaks up with them. So the heartache, and the combination of, he broke his arm.
The injury,
And he went, kind of the same story. He went in, he was 17, they gave him a bottle of Percocets, and that was it for Corey. It was love at first sight with that for him. And I would say within, maybe 4 or 5 months, he couldn't afford those, and the heroin came into play.
Right.
And, my kids were kind of honest. I mean, I've always made it so that they feel like they could come to me and tell me everything. He came to me in his senior year and said, Mom, I'm struggling. I'm hooked on the Percocets at this point, and I need help. So we went to the high school and talked to the guidance counselor, and right after he graduated, he went into his first detox. And from there, he went to Project Turnabout over in Spectrum, has a really good men's program. And he did really well for 4 or 5 months. But his disease in his head told him, I got this, I don't need to stay. It's time for me to move on. And I advised him not to, because I know from my own experience that was not enough time. He hadn't really joined a group, and I kept on saying stuff. They're probably like, I don't want to hear you lecture me about recovery. And that's basically what I kept on doing, was shoving it down their throat. But I wanted to make sure that they knew that this is what they needed to do to succeed. But so, we got Corey that's 17, 18, and now I have my middle son, Jesse. At this point, he started at about 11 with pot. Pot was his first love. And by the time he was 14, he got himself in trouble with the law. Some B&Es, stupid stuff, drinking and being silly, and got caught again. So at the age of 15, he was sent to Highland Detention Center, which I thought maybe would have woke him up, but it didn't. He came out with an ankle bracelet for 6 months, and had to go to a program right here in Brockton. Can't remember, it was called JP something at the time. And so now I have my oldest addiction flaring, and trying to manage what's going on with him. And he's out in the streets. And I've tried enabling. Listen, I've tried both tough love, and I guess I loved him enough that I didn't realize I was enabling him. But for my case, my boys, it didn't make a difference which way I did it with them. Corey has lived out in the streets, and Corey has been incarcerated. And he's been in I don't know how many detoxes and how many treatment facilities over the 5 or 6 years that he struggled. He certainly tried. He went up to Portland, Maine at one point also. Okay. And so I got him going, and now I got Jesse going. So now I'm like teeter-tottling between the two of them. Yep. And then we have one of my twins, Jordan, who's my youngest, started developing. He was bipolar, ADHD, so he had a lot of mental health issues. And I knew he liked pot because he seemed to like to medicate himself too. Jordan and Jesse had ADHD and bipolar, so the two of them were pretty close.
Self-medicating, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm trying to juggle 3 kids with problems and my own recovery, which
stay on track. You're trying to keep on track.
It was really, really hard and difficult. And I remember at one point, one Christmas, both Jesse and Corey were incarcerated, so I had to go down and visit them, and I had to like go up and spend 15 minutes with Corey, come back down, go through the whole checkout thing, go back up and see Jesse. And around that time, Jordan, when he was 19, he had some borderline schizophrenia, so he was cycling mental institutions while these two were cycling detoxes. Jordan was in 7 or 8 mental institutions in 1 year, because what he would do as soon as he got out in 3 weeks to a month, he would stop taking the medication. Until after about 2 years of that, we found medication that he could get a shot once a month, because he could not be trusted without, you know. So, yeah, it was, I don't even, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating. I was so worried about all 3 of them. I'd go to bed at night and say, when is that phone going to ring? Or I'd have nightmares or dreams about finding them dead somewhere on the streets. Somewhere along all this, I did reach out and went to Learn to Cope. I heard you talk about that earlier. And I'm always making sure there's resources. If I don't know, I'm going to go look for them.
Right.
So I did go to Learn to Cope, and that's where I learned how to Section 35. Both Corey, all 3 have been sectioned, but Jesse, which is my middle one, which is the tough one, he was sectioned 8 times.
And I've sectioned my children a couple of times as well. So
right. I hate you. Don't ever talk to me again. But I didn't care. It was the first time in a while I'd gotten a good night's sleep. I knew they were safe.
You weren't going to get the call.
I wasn't going to get the call. I didn't have to worry about food or any of that stuff. So I didn't care how mad they were. And somebody used to say...
It's amazing how we can do that as a parent.
I know, absolutely.
But it's a great feeling.
It is. I was so relieved, and he couldn't understand that.
Right.
Jesse had gone to Bridgewater a couple of times, so he got the bad experience. Right.
Which was one of the experiences one of my sons had, and was, I think, the trigger to put him onto the road to recovery.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I wish I could say that for mine, but unfortunately it didn't. And I remember saying several times, like, what is it going to take you guys to get sober? Am I going to have to bury you? And would pray that wouldn't be the final end of all that. But, let me try to see here. So there were periods where they were all good, and I'd always say, when's the shoe going to drop? Always. Right. Because there would be very seldom were they all sober together. It would always be Corey sober, Jesse's messed up, Jordan's about to get sober, Corey relapsed, Jesse's sober. It was just a yo-yo and a big circus.
Vicious cycle. Right.
And so I, in April, and it surprised me because I didn't expect this phone call, but on April 11th of 2013, I was at work, and Jesse called, and he was screaming, and I'm like, I can't understand what you're saying to me, buddy. And he said, Jordan's gone. he passed away. And I remember like just falling to the ground and work, and someone was nice enough to drive me because they're like, you're not driving. And
Jordan is the youngest?
Jordan is my youngest. He was 20 years old when he passed away.
Oh,
and I got there, and the cops were already there, and, you know, I couldn't go in, and they said, you know, it's going to be hours, and why don't you get together with your family? And, you know, they're like, you don't want to see your son walk out in a body bag. And I said, yeah. So, you know, the family gathered, and I had no money. Of course, I didn't think I was going to bury a child at 20. And the sober community and people I've known did a fundraiser and a GoFundMe page, and it afforded Jordan and the family enough money to do a proper service for him. Yep. And, you know, I struggled in there a couple months after I relapsed.
You relapsed.
I relapsed because I was not plugged into where I was supposed to be because, like I had said to you, I'd lost touch of my own recovery and my own needs, trying to save them, that I totally forgot about what I needed to do. I had backed away from meetings and people that loved and cared about me that knew when something was wrong. They knew something was wrong.
Right.
They couldn't call me on that because I wasn't around anymore. And funny as it was, I relapsed on Suboxone. Someone had it at Jordan's wake, and I held on to it for a couple of days before I decided to do so. But so I tried to get through Jordan's death the best I could, but you know, I was, like I said, I decided that I was going to dibble dabble, and the next thing you know, my end result was heroin. Myself, I ended up doing it, and in July 31st of 2015, I decided to go out and get clean. In the process of that, and how can I miss this? Corey got out of, he was up in Portland, Maine, called and said, I can't stay sober. I need to come back down to Mass, and I'm going to go back into treatment, and I'm going to do long-term, like a halfway house and not just a sober house. And I said, great. So I picked him up. He was messed up at that time. We called for a couple of days. We got him a bed at High Point, Plymouth. He went down there. He sounded great. Had said, I'm going to stay to go to the other side, which he did. It was probably on the 9th or 10th day, and he called and he said, can you bring me down cigarettes? You know how this goes.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
I ran down and I brought him cigarettes, and he called the next day on Sunday and said that he was leaving and getting kicked out because of his insurance. This was a big thing on my boys' line. The insurance wouldn't cover it, to say why they had to leave. And he said, I'm going to come up and stay with Dad for a couple of days. I'll take the train up. I said, all right. It's the first time my son never called me or asked me to pick him up, which I guess is the way it's supposed to go. But my mom went to go get him at the train station at 1 o'clock in Brockton. He wasn't there. 2 o'clock, he wasn't there. 3 o'clock, he wasn't there. By 4, I'm like, he's up to no good. I already knew.
Right.
And he showed up at his dad's at 8 o'clock. He was high. Made a couple of phone calls. And he said to his dad, we can finish watching the Patriots game. I'm going to go take a shower. Now, because David doesn't know anything, now we talk about like one parent, which is me. I'm fully aware of what's going on. They've lived with me. I know what their addiction does. So when they go in the bathroom and say that they're taking a shower, what they're doing is turning on the water, and they're shooting up in the bathroom. And I usually allow 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm banging. And if the door ain't open, I'm kicking it down. David doesn't know that. He's an alcoholic himself, but he doesn't know much about that aspect of it. So when Corey went in the bathroom, he didn't think anything of it until Rachel said, like an hour later, Corey's been in the bathroom for a really long time, Dad. And David kicked the door open, and Corey was hunched over, overdosed on the floor. Blood everywhere. And he called me and said, it's not good, Jean. They tried Narcan, I don't know how many times, quite a few times, and they took him in the ambulance, and we had to drive to the Brockton Hospital. What a long drive that was. And they called back its way through the drive and said, we're sorry to tell you, but your son didn't make it.
Oh, my goodness.
And I just was like, how is this possible that this is happening to a second one? Corey's my firstborn, so he was just my everything. And we got there, and I got to go in and see him, and I washed the blood off his face. I was pissed at the hospital. I'm like, can't you at least clean him up before you let us see him? But, you know, again, we had no money.
Right.
Yeah, I think I would have thought to get a life insurance policy, especially when my kids were addicts, but you just don't think. You just don't think about it. And so once again, people helped and raised, and again, the community came again, and we raised enough money to give him all three of my kids have been cremated. I decided, it got really bad for me, and then that's when in July, I decided that I needed to get sober, because it was getting bad for me. And Jesse was doing bad, so the two of us, I was no help to him. So I decided, I've gotten sober in Massachusetts. It's not about the fact that I decided to go to Florida, that Massachusetts recovery is lousy. It's just that every corner that I drove by reminded me of my child.
Triggers.
I lived in Rockland, and I was living in Hanover, so both places reminded me of everything to do with my kids. And I needed just that mental break to just kind of like go somewhere and focus on me and my recovery and try to get through some of my grief or deal with it at that point. And I called up a friend, Matt Gammon, and he said, I work for Banyan, and I can get you down there. And I said, okay. Hopped on a plane. At that point, I quit my 15-year job. Gave back my car, gave up my apartment. My son was going into treatment himself, so I didn't have to worry. But I needed to not worry. I needed to worry about me, which is very hard when you have children.
Yes.
And they're
in this
sick.
case, you've lost two, and you know.
My biggest fear was always that Jesse was going to be next. And so, honestly, when I say to you, when I got back November. Corey died October 5th, 2014. I left July. I came back November of 2015, and Jesse was a mess. And so for half of 2016, I was trying to get him sober.
But you yourself had successfully worked the recovery out of state and came back.
I came back
and
right
was
into
strong enough to be able to try to help.
Right, but I knew the boundaries too. I knew that I could not take the focus off of myself because I had already been there and I knew what it got me.
Back.
So I learned my lesson, I guess.
No, that's absolutely true.
So I decided within that time, a couple times, Jesse got sectioned, but in January. So Jesse went to Florida twice. So I sent him on a plane in January. 2016. He called somebody. They paid for his airline, and they paid for his insurance out there. So he hopped on a plane, and he went out. And from January to April, Jesse bounced and bounced and bounced, and in and out of this place and in and out of that place. And he just wasn't taking it serious. And he told me when he got home that he kind of thought it was a vacation. I'm like, really? A vacation, Jess? So after all the relapses and him being 3,000 miles away and running out of money and his insurance, they were like not going to pay his insurance anymore because he wasn't taking it serious. He came back. He came back May, and then we did a couple of treatment facilities back here. And it was just a battle with Jess. He was so broken. He'd lost his two brothers.
Sure.
Jordan was the closest to him. They were actually not a year apart. They're 3 weeks. 11 months and 3 weeks away from each other. Jesse never talked about it. I don't know if he felt guilty because Jesse was with him the night that Jordan died. I think they had done some stuff together. Jordan actually died from a Suboxone and benzo. There was no opiates in Jordan's system. Corey died from a fentanyl overdose. His was purely fentanyl with a mix of Valiums. These kids like to mix the opiates and the benzos. It's such a deadly combination.
Russian roulette.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. So from the time Jesse got home in May to the time he left again in September, I personally have administered Narcan 8 times on my son, personally myself. I carried it in my purse. I carried it in my car. He's overdosed 4 times in my back seat. I've had to pull over, yank him out. He's overdosed right before we got to the detox, Summit Detox up in Haverhill. We didn't even make it. We made it to the front door, and he went out. Another time at my mother's twice. And sure enough, that the day he got the ticket to go, so he called the people back that he knew, and they, again, got him a ticket and paid for his insurance. And Jesse went out, and he overdosed twice before he got on the plane. He overdosed in my back seat at 9 o'clock. We pulled over in Braintree. I administered two cans up his nose. They finally, the ambulance arrived. They took him to the hospital. They're supposed to keep him 4 hours.
Right.
Quincy only kept him 2. He was such an aggravation to them. They were like, after 2 hours, just go.
Yeah, go. Yeah,
along with, they gave him benzos. I can't even comprehend that. But, you know, I got him in the car. I rushed to the Logan Airport. It was 12 o'clock. His flight was to leave at 4. I get a call, and he overdosed in the Logan Airport's bathroom. State trooper was good enough. I don't know how he made it, but he made it to the airport by 4 o'clock in time to get on the plane and get to Florida. Wow. He barely made it there, barely.
Yeah, right.
And he said to me before he left, he's like, Mom, what would you do if I died? I was like, I can't even wrap my head around something like that, Jesse. Don't even bring that up.
Yeah, right.
I go, that would be it for me. I don't know if I'd be functionable. I don't know what would happen, but I don't know if I could handle it. And the same thing started to happen out in Florida again. Jesse just couldn't stay sober. He just would go in, and this is what I mean by 7 days.
Yep.
It doesn't work. For some reason, out in Florida, they do a PHP, which is 30 days, and he kept on skipping that. He kept on going from detox to sober living, which you can do just about what you want.
Right.
I'm like, what happened to that 30-day piece, Jess? That gives you some serious counseling,
right.
You get your meds straight, and at least 30 days under your belt. And he just kept on doing it his way. And I'm like, Jess. He called me and told me that was discussing this about him being marketed. Someone approached him and offered him a scooter and money to relapse so that they could get a kickback from where they were sending him. Right. I was disgusted by that. And I said, don't. He's like, do you think that's a good idea, Mom? And I'm like, no, Jess. Are you kidding me? You're not even a week sober and somebody hands you $500. What do you think you're going to do with that? So, you know.
He's a cash cow to somebody else's program.
Exactly.
Because he's insured.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of these places out there, they have people that are only 30 days sober running the sober houses, and they're relapsing, and he's calling me up and telling me everybody's relapsed in the house. I'm like, where are you staying? Yeah. You know, and he just kept on getting in the wrong places over and over and over again. And he finally, South Bay Harbor, one of those places, I can't remember, he was in so many, but he graduated. He called me up that Friday and said, Mom, I finished, and I'm going to this next place, and I feel really good. And he just really was upbeat and positive.
And you felt great.
I felt great. Yep. And he said, I'll call you later. I said, all right. Love you. Proud of you. I always tell my kids, even that I love them and I'm proud of them, and you know, I'm there for them, and I support them, and I'll direct them to people that can help them, because I'm their mother. They went to meetings with me, but they'd be like, you know. So I knew a lot of young kids, because there's so many, and I would introduce them to my boys and say, can you take it from here? And I tried to let them have their own recovery and mine. And Friday night, no phone call. Saturday, no phone call. Now I'm getting the gut instinct. I'm like, something's wrong. Something's wrong. He never called me. If he's doing the right thing and he's in where he's supposed to be, he would have called me. He would have gotten my message and said, call Mom. And nothing on Saturday. Now I'm panicking. And on Sunday, I'm with my mom, and we're out and about, and the Hanover police show up at my sister's looking for my ex-husband, David. And I was like, why are they looking for him? He's never lived there. He's lived in Rockland. Yeah. And I never put two and two together, didn't even think. And so I called him up, and I'm like, look, the Hanover police are looking for you. You need to give them a call and see what's going on. he said, all right, I will. And so the next thing was my mom said, oh, we got to stop by David's on the way back. Now, she knew for the whole car ride, which was an hour drive, that Jesse had passed away. But didn't tell me because she knew how I was going to react.
Sure.
And we probably would have gotten in an accident because my reaction was just that. When she told me, I slammed the brakes, I punched the steering wheel. I think it was, I just screamed that there's no way this could be happening for the third time. No way. I went to David's, and he's like, yeah, they called. They found him 9 o'clock on Delray Beach by himself. He had passed away 2 hours prior to that. And he had to identify a tattoo Jesse got on his face to know that it was him. They had to, I had to pay for a funeral out in Florida because they had to do the toxicology report and embalm him and bring him back. And again,
the community came together.
Oh, unbelievable. Raised enough money because it was more expensive this trip around. Sure. We were, again, standing in that line, looking at my last and only son laying in the casket, knowing that I'm never going to see him again and that this disease has taken so much from me. And how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? I have to say that I am sober today, and I do it. I get by it every day. I get up. I got into counseling. Jesse had the proper services. I got 3 ashes now. I've got them cremated, so it's, ashes here. And I bought a plot this time around because I didn't have enough money to buy a plot and a headstone. We raised enough to be able to buy the plot, and some money's still set aside for a headstone. So hopefully in the next couple of months, I'll finally be able to get a headstone for all 3 of them, and they can all be together.
All together.
In one resting spot, yeah. In the process, this is where Recovery Happen came in. I needed something to keep my mind off of stuff, the stigma, the shame. People still like that.
Self-inflicted shame within yourself, or even?
But some, and then, the outside world saying, God, what did this woman...
What kind of a mother is this?
What kind of a mother is this? What did she possibly do? She didn't lose 1, she lost 3.
Yes.
So, yeah, that became an issue, too. And I can tell you I've done everything humanly possible as a mother to try to save my boys, and, God had a different plan.
Every parent has.
Of course, absolutely.
There's no question about
right.
that. And that, going back to, we mentioned the learn to cope aspects of the support group, that is there.
Yep. And like Chris said, too, I reached out on Facebook. There is quite a few outlets on there, and they do have outlets for people that have lost loved ones due strictly to addiction. Because I had gone to Compassionate Friends after Jordan died, and theirs is everything. And theirs goes the stigma. Like, this woman beside me lost her daughter to cancer and to a car accident, suicide, and then I would say an overdose. And I felt like they didn't think that was a good enough, it's like...
you didn't qualify.
Yeah, like I didn't qualify.
You didn't qualify.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, lo and behold, came GRASP.
Our children had real illnesses. Your child chose.
Right, exactly, because I think, it's a choice.
Yeah, it's a choice, right.
When they're sober, and that goes for me, it is a choice when we pick up, but thereafter the choice goes away. But there's a mental obsession that goes on.
But even when you go back to the initial injuries that were sustained when they were a lot younger in high school, and the prescription
of course.
that was given, like you said, it was a bottle of pills. It wasn't, a
few.
Yep. It was, here's 90 perks.
It's crazy.
It's
crazy. It really
whatever
is.
It might have been. We certainly have made progress today.
Thank God.
As a result of those poor decisions that were made back then on the part of the prescribing physicians, the pharmaceutical industry itself, absolutely, positively. But yeah, the stigma is a real issue for us as parents.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, even within your own family. You know,
yeah, because, you know, my sister would, you know, look at me and go, why are you doing this and why are you doing that? And you should have did this and you should have did that. So shame came from that, too, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's got 3 daughters, and thank God none of them have issues. And she doesn't have an issue herself. So they don't get it. Because she used to say to me, don't you love your kids enough to get sober? And she just didn't understand. I'm like, of course I love my kids. This has nothing to do with love. And I'm not, you don't put it on a moral issue because it has nothing to do with that, you know. So, you know, like I said, I reached out to a lot of support groups. I found GRASP, which is strictly people that have lost loved ones through addiction. Yep. Mm-hmm. There's a couple new there's Sunrise in Braintree, that a woman who lost her son, she started it. And now I think they're doing one in Quincy. The recovery center in Quincy, they do it on Thursday nights and Tuesday once a month. Mm-hmm. So, and I had gone, and there was literally 25 women in that room just in the Braintree, South Shore area that were willing to go and talk about it, because there's a lot of people that won't talk about it.
Exactly.
That won't talk about it. Mm-hmm. I have to keep it in the forefront, and I want to talk about it because
it's why this media that we're here today, and we did, we'll do on the radio again as well, is so important today. You know, I mean, Peggy and I, again, we count our blessings because our 2 sons are in recovery today. But the experience that we went through as parents of that emotional roller coaster,
nightmare.
Nowhere near yours, God forbid. You know, people shouldn't have to go through that without being made aware of the resources that are out there and the help that's out there.
Yeah, and so, you know, it's funny because somewhere in between Jordan and Corey, I had made a page. It's called the McCauley Boys Hope Fund, and it's exactly that. It's been up there for 2 years. I post any informational events, places to go. So that turned into just an information education place. And then this came into place. And let's
talk about that a little bit, because I met you a couple of months ago.
You met me at an event.
At an event.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, that's a real powerful message.
Yeah, because
of
you know
awareness.
what? It says, like, we do recover. People do recover. I mean, I think over the last couple of years that we've lost so many that the focus, well, it should be, but it was just drowning in so many people that were dying, and it's all, like I say, the 80 babies. They're all between 20 and 29.
Yep.
I just went to another wake 2 weeks ago to a friend that was of Corey's, 31, left behind a son. And it's so sad, but we forget that there are a million people that have gotten recovery, that are doing well, that start their lives, that get a second chance in life, and get to live. And
it's not only the addict, it's we as the parents,
exactly,
our loved ones that are equally
you do.
important.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. You know, I think Chris had said it earlier, too. I mean, she's not personally an addict or an alcoholic, but she is in recovery. So the family becomes in recovery also. So I love fashion. And I really was like, this had been in my head for a long time about what can I do to bring fashion and recovery to the forefront, and so that people would wear it, and I wasn't going to have anything goofy, because a lot of people want one day at a time.
And not be ashamed of it.
No, like this shirt here says, stay humble, hustle hard. My logo is over here. I
think it's a very attractive logo.
Yeah.
It's very eye-catching.
Yeah,
and
I have all sorts of different stuff on my website that you can find. And Danny Dwyer is from Easton. He was in the paper a couple weeks back. He's an addict that was actually a Boston cop and became an addict and was living on the streets of Boston. He just ran the marathon. And I tried to get my stuff because he said, I would love to wear it because it's right in line with my journey.
Yeah.
So he's doing some upcoming races, and he will be wearing my stuff and promoting it, which is good. This has been going on for a year. It's slow. I can tell you that there's still stigma there. People don't want to broadcast recovery.
Right.
Or they don't want to wear anything that might insinuate it. But most of my stuff says love. I have another shirt that says faith. So there's really nothing. It's open-ended.
You've got the jewelry aspect in there as well, which
I do. I have
isn't quite as voice of flashy, but is powerful.
Right, and I make sober bracelets. We make in-memory bracelets for people that have lost loved ones. I've had quite a few of those where, you know, it says their daughter or their son and their initial, and I have a couple of charms that have beautiful sayings and whatever. I've created it that you can create it yourself, and because I've got like 100 different charms. So, you know, it's almost like create your own bracelet. However, inspirational bracelet, it can be a recovery, and it can be someone that's lost a loved one. And I just know in my heart and my soul that my boys are pushing me, that they're with me on this. One of my biggest things to give back is that once it starts to flourish, which I'm hoping, or I do an event, I donate 20% of the sales on that particular event or at the end of every month. And I want to be able to do a scholarship in memory of my boys, and be able to make it so that whether the scholarship is to give somebody a month's worth of living somewhere, or to go to a program, or, you know, they have nothing when they get there, so they need gift cards and other things like that. So that'll be, you know, something that I want to continue to do. And I'll pick a different one to donate to every month so that it's widespread, you know what I mean?
Now, we met at Oliver Ames High School.
Yes,
when
we did.
Saw the filming of If Only by the Wahlberg Foundation. What's been your experience when you are now getting out to these other events? You know, you had mentioned Teen Challenge earlier. You know, that you would be, they're having
coming
a
up on a
5K road race in May, I believe. You know,
May 6th, actually, and they get quite a few people, I think 500. I'll be doing that event, so I will be there. It makes me feel great. I'm able to share this. A lot of people do know my story, because I don't really know if there's a lot of people that have lost 3. There's quite a few that have lost 2. I have gotten emails from across the world from people that are not in recovery, to parents telling me their children are going through the same thing, to people that are in recovery telling me they have recovery now, or they're struggling. It gives me some purpose. It really does, because, you know, I thought my purpose was my kids, and my life was my boys. And when they're gone, I thought I had nothing, and I needed to find something to fill that in memory of them, because I will not let them die in vain.
Keep that memory alive.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I meet all different people, all walks of life when I'm at these events. And people will come up, and I'll share my story or a piece of my story, and you'd be amazed that, they'll start talking to me about what they're going through, you know what I mean? Which, in return, helps me.
You know, I can recall your story when it was publicized, when you lost Jesse as your 3rd son. And I was like, this is unbelievable, you know. And somebody had actually, during the course of our networking, mentioned, you know, you need to get a hold of Jean Marie for the show.
Get a hold of her,
And then when I walked into Oliver Ames,
there I was.
There you were, you know,
perfect timing,
along with Chris. You know,
I know,
right next door. So I mean, it was just like,
all right, God just put me right there for you. Yeah, I mean, I don't think things happen by mistake. I think things happen for a reason. I think there's a reason why I connect with certain people, and I'm very much willing, like I said, to talk about my story and get it out there, so, you know, people know they're not alone.
It's such a powerful, powerful story. It's, I mean, it's a devastating, you know, heartbreaking, you know, but at the same time, it also re-energizes the fact that, you know, we say there is hope. There is hope. There is hope. You know, you are the classic example of that. There is hope.
Trust me, there are days, and there are days that I don't want anybody to think I walk around on cloud 9, or there are days that, maybe even weeks, that I will not get out of bed. I will not do my hair. I don't want to deal with anything, and I'll shut it down. But I can only do that for so long, because isolation is a bad thing for people in recovery, and I'm well aware that I cannot isolate for too long, because then I shut the world completely out, and then I become lost. So all these learning lessons I've learned along the way about my own recovery, and I'm able to share with people too, you know, what works and what didn't work, and advice, and, you know, don't tell anybody what they should or shouldn't do, but by all means, there have been times where I haven't wanted to like deal with the day. More than not, it's getting a little better, but that's due to a lot of support, a lot of family support. I don't know where I'd be without my family, and counseling, one-on-one, and grief counseling, and the willingness for me, and my willingness to just like want to feel a little bit better, you know. I pray to my boys every day. I talk to them every day. Sometimes they show me signs, sometimes they don't.
That's got to be eerie to a certain degree.
I've had
my health must be a very warm feeling inside when you see a sign.
I've seen Maureen Hancock, and she's told me things that there's no way possible she could know that stuff unless my boys were communicating with her. So the joy and the comfort. And I recently had one where I was told that, it's going to make me cry because it's beautiful, but when Jesse passed, I was told that this tall, dark, and handsome boy in a suit came and got him, which was his brother, Corey. And they're all three are together, and they're happy, and they're at peace. And being able to get that information, and along with other stuff that she told me that there's no way she could know it.
She could have known it.
That renews my faith in God, and that they're at peace and not suffering anymore. Because sometimes we don't see that or don't want to see that. I posted a video not too long ago of Jesse, and it was the first time I saw how sad and broken he was, and how much he was struggling. Because he's a goofball. He was my middle kid, but he tried to be really silly so you wouldn't see that side. I went
on your website before our show this week, you know, and you've got several videos on there with
Jesse playing the guitar.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so funny.
And the music in the background.
He loved music.
Some of the songs. Yeah. You know, I sat there. I was sitting there the other night, as a matter of fact, you know. My wife was probably wondering what I was doing. She's hearing this music. You know, why is he listening to the music, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, let's, how would somebody contact you, aside from being at the different events?
So if they go on Facebook and type exactly Recovery Happens, Inc., it'll bring you up to my website or my page. And then it has a button that says Shop Now. Yep. You click on that, and it's going to give you all my products and all the things that I sell. And they click on what they want. They pick the color and their size, and it goes into a checkout. And then they check out, and then I get the order, and it gets shipped. Yeah, and I like to personalize it right now. Probably if it got so big, can't say. I maybe have to stamp them, but I put a special note in each one, thanking them and that their support, and that 20% of this is going to go to help another addict out.
To some organization.
Exactly.
To help those
so that's where they're going to find me, and my number's right there.
Yeah, there you go.
So, I mean, you could call me, but I'm probably going to tell you the best way is to go on my site and order it that way. Right. I did.
And you've got apparel for both men and women.
Yes, men and women.
I saw on there.
Correct.
Tank tops, you mentioned hats.
Yeah. I do baseball caps. They're coming in the next week or two. Yeah. I had the beanies up.
I saw one of your white caps with, I think that was the Recovery Happens logo, and I'm like, oh, I like that.
Yeah, you know? So the hat's coming in, so these are going to be, I would have liked them to be ready, I think, by May 6th, but I'm not sure.
Right.
And I'm always coming up with stuff. I just said my ultimate dream is to really open a recovery store. I'd like to open it somewhere in Brockton or Quincy. And I'd like it to be like an espresso bar, because we like to drink coffee, or a Red Bull. And I'd like to have like a meditation room, or even if they wanted to use it to do meetings there, and be able to have the clothing. And I'm always coming up with so many ideas about it. It's crazy.
Entrepreneurial endeavors. That's excellent. Yep.
I believe in it with my heart and soul. So hopefully, it's been a year. It's slow, but sometimes you got to fall on your butt before you become really successful, and I'm not willing to give this up, so I'm just going to keep on plugging away at it.
You've got 3 wonderful boys looking down on you,
absolutely.
saying, Mom,
absolutely.
we're going to help, Mom. We're going to keep it going.
Absolutely.
Well, I know that we are almost at the end of an hour, believe
Wow.
it or not, of a 28,
Told you I could talk.
Of a 28-minute episode.
Told you I could talk for a long time.
And, I think what we'll do is we'll kind of close here. I know that will give us a little bit of time to maybe download some of the information on the apparel and put it into the program
absolutely.
as well.
Yep.
Fill that out. Jean Marie, I can't even begin to, first of all, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
And your journey. We love you.
Thank you.
All right.
It's nice to meet you.
God bless.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at A Deadly Silence, we hope you enjoyed tonight's episode, and we'll see you again next week.